Hey everyone, you're listening to the TEN7 Podcast, where we get together every fortnight to talk about technology, business, and the humans in it. I'm your host, Ivan Stegic. In this episode of the podcast, I'm chatting with Wilbur Ince, who is a front-end developer at Electric Citizen, an avid cyclist, an active member of the Twin Cities Drupal group, and has described himself as anti-war and pro-people. He's based right here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm so glad to be talking with him today. Wylbur, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's nice outside again. We've been doing all these podcasts in the cold winter, and the last couple of weeks, the sun is shining. It's good to be alive.
It has been a very interesting spring, hasn't it? I don't know that it's ever lasted so long before.
I agree. It seems like the trees and the grass suddenly became green.
I think the biggest thing I notice now is that the length of the day is already longer, and it seemed like we missed spring. It's all of a sudden we're in summer.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's good.
So I wanted to start with your name, Wilbur Ince. I've seen it spelled with a Y online, and I've made the mistake of actually writing it with a Y. I think it's a mistake, but I think that's your username. I'm not sure. So I want to ask you about the difference between them, because there's also two websites.
At some point, I realized to go on websites with Wylbur, you're always going to be fighting and have to have a unique name like Wilbur-Ince, Wilbur.Ince, Wilbur.6148. And I saw somebody else, I actually copied it, where they replaced the I's with Y's. And I came up with Wylbur, and I have almost no problem getting that everywhere. So any social media, any kind of website presence, if you look for Wylbur.
That's really a great way to kind of hack the system. I tried doing that as well with my first name, but there's a ton of people with Ivan, and then even exchanging the A with the number 4 doesn't really help either. So kudos to you. Now, your last name, Ince, I did a little bit of research. It's either from one or two counties in the northwest of England, or it's a Turkish name. Have you researched your ancestors?
You know, I haven't done a lot of that, but my brother and my sister have. They've done a ton of work on that. Actually, you're wrong on both, and that's interesting. So we do know and have heard about there's a Turkish movie director that has the last name Ince. I'm trying to think if that's Will or not, if it's Will Ince. I also know about England, but really where it came from is that we were German immigrants. And we had a very complicated name. It was spelled UNECTZ. At immigration, the three brothers were there, and they looked at him and they said, no, that's not going to go here. And so the three brothers actually picked three different derivations of that: UNCE, UNZE, and INCE. And those three brothers all settled in Minnesota. And so we had relatives that are named Unce, that are, far back related to us in the same town that I grew up. I grew up in Shakopee.
In Shakopee,
and Twin Cities. Yeah.
And you said that your ancestors settled in Minnesota, so you are truly born and bred Minnesotan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've been here my whole life. I actually spent a little bit of time in Brussels in the mid '90s. Before I was a technical guy, I was a marketing guy, and I worked with the frequent flyer business, and I lived in Brussels for a couple of years, and I missed Minnesota, and I came back here.
Why did you go to Brussels?
I worked with Sabina, the airline, the ex-airline of Belgium, and I helped them launch their frequent flyer program.
My goodness, I think they're called Brussels Airlines right now.
Oh, is that right?
And we ended up flying over spring break with them over to Brussels. So we were just recently in Brussels. It's a beautiful town, beautiful city.
And it's a great place to land as an expatriate. I was there for a couple of years, and it's nice, but they have spring and they have fall. There's no winter and there's no summer. We're really lucky to live in a place that you can get 100-degree days and you can get minus 40-degree days,
For those of us who don't have AC, 100 degrees right now sounds like hell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It can be. I think the worst thing about warm weather is when it's at night. If it's 90 degrees at night, that's impossible.
It is impossible. So you grew up in Minnesota, spent some time in Brussels, Belgium, came back to Minnesota. It sounded like you became a technical guy from being a marketing guy. Whenabouts did that happen?
I had a pretty typical American upbringing. I have actually about 50 first cousins. We have we're German Catholics, so big families.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was one of the first people to go to college. And so, you studied hard, and I went to college. I graduated from the University of Minnesota. I worked a couple of years and then went back and got my MBA and ended up, working in frequency marketing. That's the marriage of marketing and technology. We're tracking people's behavior and we're tracking things, and then we're rewarding for them for that, or encouraging them to buy more things. And in that process, I realized I was a technical guy. I just love to solve puzzles and problems, and have just sort of a terrier kind of personality about learning and finding about things, What I also found out was that I'm not a very good marketing person, because in marketing, you have to lie a lot. And that was just too much,
Yeah.
I actually retired from marketing in 1994. After having a successful run as a marketing person, I just thought there was something else. And of course, in 1994, technology was just really taking off. That was the way to go. And I didn't know what I was going to do after marketing, but that seemed to figure itself out.
I know Drupal wasn't around in 94, so you must have done something to do with technology and the web before Drupal. And I guess the question is, what was that thing and why did you come to Drupal?
Yeah, so after being a marketing guy, really made my life a lot simpler. I was doing a lot of work with a nonprofit bike shop in town, where we were recycling bicycles and teaching people bicycle skills. And they needed a website. At that time, we were hard coding websites, and I got to a point and I said, hey, it would be great to have this menu show up the same on every page. And somebody said, you should look at PHP. That's the thing. PHP is the thing. And somewhere along the way there, I figured out PHP, and then I met a woman named Allie Micka.
Oh, Allie. Shout out to Allie Micka.
Allie Micka is, if you would look at the etymology of, or the tree of where everyone came through and got exposed to Drupal in the Twin Cities, she probably touches everyone. So she got me on Drupal, and I started looking at that. And my intention was really, to get websites to people that didn't have money to build them, nonprofits and little local organizations. And that's how I got into Drupal. And I just sputtered around and made a lot of websites for a lot of people and a lot of different little causes. And it took me a long time to figure out that I don't even know when I became a pro. I think it was a couple of years ago. And all of a sudden you just sort of realize to yourself, it's like, I guess I'm really, this is my thing. I'm really pretty good at this. I know a lot more than I thought I did.
And I'm writing invoices every month, and I'm getting paid to do this. And this thing that I love that used to be a hobby is actually turning into a profession.
Right. I think it came clear when you would get questions from people about how to do something, and then you'd be like, oh, that's easy. Here, just do this and that and that. And when you answered more questions than you had, I think that's when I was like, oh, yeah, I think maybe I know what I'm doing.
So your introduction to Drupal and to the Drupal Twin Cities community really comes through Allie and she is one of the kind of the roots of the Drupal Twin Cities group. I really should ask Allie to join me on the podcast. That would be a really interesting discussion, I think.
Yeah.
And do you recall the first Drupal event in the Twin Cities that you ever attended?
I don't. I worked at a nonprofit bike shop over in St. Paul. It's called Cycles for Change. We were in the Renaissance building in downtown St. Paul. I had met Allie at a PHP user group meetup. She was looking for space and she moved into that building. And so that was a long time ago, 2005, 2004. But I think there's a lot of common stories in the Twin Cities about people that came to Drupal kind of organically through other things, especially through the nonprofit community and activism. I think that's really a big part of the Twin Cities. That makes it special is how many people use Drupal because they have this community focus, and giving back, kind of a thing.
I agree. And it strikes me that everything that the Drupal Camp Twin Cities has done in the last several years since its existence, I think we've had, what is this, our sixth camp coming up now? Fifth or sixth? All of it has happened through volunteer.
Yeah.
And you get sponsors of the camp, but the camp itself is all run by volunteers every year. And it amazes me that it happens every year after year. And I think that activism that runs through the community is what drives that. You're a very highly active member of the community.
It's great to hang out with people like that, and be part of an organization like that. And you talk about this camp, right? I mean, when you think about it, we just went through and did the sessions. We picked the sessions. You look at the sessions and we have a hard time every year because we have too many advanced sessions. And we look at the camp and we say, what are people that are new to Drupal? Do we have enough sessions for them? Because we have such high flyers in this area and such good sessions, If you look at a camp like that, if you look at an event like that, 4 days, and it costs $35, I mean, you go to other camps, lunch costs $35.
Right.
On a $1,000, $1,500 conference fee, we're doing this for nothing.
We are doing it for nothing.
It's really amazing,
It's 4 days of programming as well. It's not a day conference or 2-day conference. Do you want to talk about what it looks like this year, when it is?
Yeah. We're, every year we plan this thing. We seem to be letting it go a little bit farther before we really dig our heels in. And I think this is we're really having a little trouble just because we're so far behind. But I think that's part of the mystique of these camps is that they're organized by people and that, let's all get together. And if you have something to talk about, then come and talk about it. What's been happening the last couple of days is our web form on the website was not forwarding messages to us. And so the first day is training, and we were kind of scrambling because we were trying to get together some training options. And now we have those 3 trainings set up, and we had 3 organizations that had contacted us asking if they could do training at our camp. And so now we're adding a 4th and a 5th training session and maybe a 6th.
Wow. I thought we were only adding a 4th one. I didn't realize we might actually be adding 3 more. That's incredible. 6 training sessions.
The 4th is official and the 5th and 6th are potential. So, and I mean, this is ProMit is one of the places. Micka, who does a very famous Drupal podcast, wants to come and do a session because he's going to come to our camp. It's raining training sessions on us.
It's raining training. So the first day is June 7th. We're doing all of those trainings. The second day is the Friday. So the 7th is a Thursday. The second day is a Friday.
Yeah.
The keynote's still scheduled for that Friday. Am I right?
I think that's right. I haven't been involved with the keynote planning, but that the keynote would be on Friday, and then we'd have just sessions on Saturday,
and then a sprint still on the Sunday.
And then the sprint on Sunday, right. And we just published the schedule, so go and take a look at it. But a lot of really power-packed presentations. It's going to be really a fun camp, really great for people that have been working with Drupal 8 and want to kind of level up. This is the place to really get some questions answered and really find out from people that are really doing it in the field. Should be really good.
That's tcdrupal.org, right,
Yep.
Wylbur?
Yep, tcdrupal.org. Yeah.
One more question about the camp, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One of my first interactions I remember with you was helping out with one of the parties. And I know you used to be the head honcho for the main guy, the big squeeze for the Saturday night or the Friday night party.
Yep.
Any plans for that this year? Are you helping out with that again, or?
I'm not on the party circuit at this time, and I don't know what's going on with that. Sorry, there's so much. there's a lot to do with the party, or with the camp. The first couple of years I worked with the Friday night party. For a few years, I was the guy on the Saturday party. Now the Friday party is kind of the official party. And then the Saturday party was like, okay, this thing is done. And it's really more the organizers' party.
The community party.
We can finally relax.
Yeah.
Right? Just like, let's just hang out. We don't have anything to manage anymore. So that was kind of fun because I took the lead from some other people that said, the best kind of a party is not at a bar where there's music blaring and you can't talk to anybody. It's really kind of a comfortable place to hang out. So I got a friend of mine, and I do a micro cinema called Casket Cinema, and he has a studio space in Northeast Minneapolis. And so I got his space and had somebody come and just cater a barbecue. We shuttled people to and from the event I'm on a bicycle club, and we used our converted school bus, a 1988 school bus, to shuttle people back and forth. And that was really one of those really fun times when everybody can just hang out and relax. And it was totally that hip Northeast Minneapolis artist scene, kind of played out.
I recall hanging out on the roof of that bus.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand how it was that you had access to a bus of such sorts. And then I got to talking to you, and it was very evident that you were involved in this thing called RAGBRAI that I'm still not really sure exactly what it is. I think it's a week-long bicycle trip, but I'm not exactly. Do you want to tell us a little more about what that is?
Sure. I'm involved with a very organized club called Team Roadkill.
Team Roadkill.
And we had a couple of lawyers on our crew, and they got us incorporated as a nonprofit, and we own a bus together, 1988 GMC customized school bus. It's funny because we have this really good organization, and sort of we look good on paper, and it's just a bunch of people that like to get together and ride and drink beer. Our big event every year is called the RAGBRAI. It's an acronym that's short for Registers Annual Great Bike Ride Across Iowa. So this is an event. If anybody that's been from Iowa knows this, this is actually the largest and the oldest ride in the country, organized bicycle ride. Every year, about 12,000 people go across Iowa, 7 days from the Missouri River to the Mississippi. In this annual pilgrimage, they pick a different route across Iowa every year and stop in at small towns. And it really captured the small town and middle America feel of Iowa. So you ride into some small town and you buy homemade pie from a church lady that makes these pies, every week for church. And she charges you $1.50 for the pie, and she thinks she's making a killing because she only usually charges $1 for that pie. And you think you're in heaven because you're getting a slice of homemade pie from an old lady in Iowa for $1.50.
Wow. And so you must have someone that drives the bus that isn't riding?
Yep.
Someone that keeps track of the whole maintenance of all of these bikes? And then do you camp? Do you camp every night, or how does that part work?
It's a camping thing. The whole idea of the team kind of came around on the RAGBRAI, because when you have 12,000 people going into a small town in Iowa, facilities become stretched to the max. And so the team, our club, kind of takes care of a lot of things that are difficult in that situation. So we have a shower system on our bus for people to take showers at night.
Wow.
Which is pretty decadent on this kind of an event. We've been doing this for our club is about 35 years old. I'm not the original people that put this together. We have so many people that have ridden with us and gone along with us that pretty much anywhere we go in Iowa, we have connections to somebody's family, and we stay in their yard rather than in the campground over at the county fair. You get to really meet people, and it's a lot more civilized than being in a giant campground with 12,000 other people.
Wow. And that's this July.
Every year, the last full week of July, everybody rides across Iowa. This will be my 20th year doing this.
Wow. So, and you must spend a fair amount of time practicing and training for the ride. I mean, it's 1 week from one major river to another in Iowa. There has to be, I'm guessing, there must be 150 miles at least.
It's the average is about 60 miles a day. They kind of alter the route. Right now, they've really been keeping the distances per day pretty low to keep the family factor there. So between 50 and 75 miles a day. At some point in the 90s when I was doing it, they were really, there's a lot of partying that goes on this ride, if you can believe that. And during the day, people drinking beer in these small towns. And so they really wanted to get rid of the party factor on the back side of the ride. These are the people that kind of lag. And so they were making, 1 year they had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday were all 90 miles plus per day. And that's
killer.
It's killer, especially in Iowa in summer. You can get a 100-degree day. You can get a 20-mile-an-hour headwind, and that can just destroy everyone. But then the partiers just get on their school buses and drive to the next event. So they abandon that.
So you're involved in the Drupal community. You're involved with Team Roadkill and RAGBRAI, but you're also an activist. You've been doing work with Amnesty International recently.
One of the things that changed after I got out of marketing and kind of had some successful years was that I realized it's easy for you to get a fancy job and make a ton of money and have as much money as you want. But that's really not what life is about for me, I did a lot of reading up on this and philosophy of what kind of a person I wanted to be in. And I came upon an idea that I was going to spend, 1/3 of my time doing work, charitable work for other organizations, other people. And I try and keep that up. And that's pretty easy for me. So I really like Amnesty International right now. That's a great organization because they speak out for prisoners of conscience. And it's very satisfying as an individual to work and collect signatures and to send these petitions on to despot leaders in another country and say, hey, there's this person you put in prison and you need to give them a fair trial and you need to drop all charges and release them. And when that happens, a local kid from Shakopee makes an impact on the world. That's really satisfying. And the other kind of activism I really like to do is really local stuff that doesn't happen. I worked with the bike shop here. It's a nonprofit bike shop that really advocates bicycle transportation for people. And when you can just sit down and work with the public, right, and make a difference in somebody's life, that's fantastic. Empower somebody to take control of their life by getting on a bike and riding to work.
What's the name of the bike shop?
Cycles for Change. They have 2 locations, one over in St. Paul and one over in Minneapolis.
Is that the nonprofit that's on Chicago in South Minneapolis?
No, that's Full Cycle, actually.
Oh, that's Full Cycle. That's another nonprofit cycle shop, right?
Yeah. Cycles for Change came up with a really revolutionary program. And what they're doing is they call it the bike library. And so think of it like a library. A person comes and they say, I'd love to have a bike. And you say, that's great. Here, we'll check you out a bike. But it's not just a bike. You get a bike, you get a helmet, you get panniers so that you can carry your groceries to and from the grocery store. You get access to training to maintain your bike. You get riding lessons. They're not called riding lessons. What are they called? Cycling lesson, right? How to ride safely in the city. What to avoid, what not to avoid. We think, it's as easy as riding a bike, but really, right? There's a lot of strategies to making being a bike rider a lot nicer. And so you get all this stuff and you say, here you go, here's all this stuff. And people come in and they work on their bike and they learn about it. And after 6 months, they go back and they talk to the person. They say, how's it going? Are you riding to work? Are you using your bike a lot? And if the person says, no, it's just not for me, right? It doesn't work for me. No problem. You can give us the bike back. Everything's great. If it's great, if they're doing it, they say, here, the bike's all yours. The bike is the lock, the helmet, all that stuff. We made a new bike rider, and now we can go on and work on the next one.
Wow, what an incredible program. And that's free to the individuals that are participating.
Free to the individuals. They just apply. They say, I have a need. This is what I want to do. And, they take it from there.
So
they've done that for hundreds and hundreds of people already. And it's really a program where it's like, let's just not put out free bicycles. Let's really change people into bicyclists.
I love the idea of it being a library where it works out or it doesn't work out. If it doesn't work out, no big deal. We read the book, didn't like the book, bring the book back.
Yeah, and right, there's no shame in that, right? But now you gave it a good chance, and we took away as many of the barriers as possible and tried to make you as successful as possible.
So they're online at cyclesforchange.org. And is that a website you help them with as well?
This might be one of those uncomfortable, embarrassing moments because that was one of the, remember I said when you first learned how to do websites, I worked on their website and we had a Drupal website there. And I learned so many things from that website for many years. And then I took a little break from Cycles for Change, but I helped them with their hosting. And that's what I really did. I still managed their hosting, but now they had a group come in and say, hey, we have a bunch of students that are learning that other content management system, WordPress. And so they built a website and I said, that's great. Let's use your website. But what I do is I give them some continuity with that. And if I take care of that. I'm their DevOps for their website, and if they have any issues, then I take care of that. So,
and I don't think
that's been happening for 2005. So, how many years is that?
13.
That's a long time. I've been there.
A long time.
That's a lot of donated hosting.
Yes, it is.
So,
I don't think there's any shame in in the switch to WordPress at all. It sounds like it was the right thing for them at the right time. So kudos to you for supporting them. I do want to just take one step back and ask a little more about Amnesty International. I've always thought of them as a large international organization that does things for human rights that really I have no power of changing or participating. But it sounds like you're doing that. It sounds like they have a local chapter of some sort. Can you speak more to maybe a case that you're working on right now? I don't know if you call them cases, how you got involved with Amnesty, and maybe how others might get involved as well if they have the inkling.
Yeah. Amnesty is a large international organization, and they were originally, their mission, or their continued mission, is to speak out for prisoners of conscience. And so their main work is that they have country specialists that investigate cases that are reported of prisoners of conscience. And they get the facts and they figure this out. And then they'll organize campaigns to put pressure on people to alleviate that situation. So that's the international organization that everybody knows and that people get a membership to, and they pay their $35 a year, and they're a member of Amnesty International. Then that campaign is there, and that is typically letter writing campaigns where we'll be writing letters to the leaders of those countries, or to the prime ministers, or to whoever is in charge that can make an effect. And people like you and I will sign those petitions. We can go online to Amnesty International or Amnesty USA, and we can sign those petitions, and those get sent to those leaders. Then the local chapters are kind of another part of this, in that we can actually do our own sort of individual events to support that. That's really where I'm involved with the organization. And that's where you can meet other people, and we can. What we like to do in the Twin Cities a lot is to piggyback on other organizations' events, and be there as a place and say, "Oh, if you're interested in this, then here's a way you can help. You can sign petitions about these." So it's not all places have a local organization, but we're really lucky again in the Twin Cities here to have some really prominent advocates from the Philippines, from Nigeria, North Korea. There's a North Korea specialist that's in town. And we also have the Humphrey Institute over at the University of Minnesota. They provide fellowships for people that are human rights advocates. And so through that organization, if you come to our local chapter meetings, which are the third Sunday of every month, it'll be this Sunday at 2:00 at First Congregational Church. We have speakers from all over the world that are directly involved with these actions that come in and talk to our group of 15 people. It's really impressive how quickly you can get associated with people that are really making a difference in the world.
That's TwinCitiesAmnesty.org. Did I get that right?
Yep, that's right.
I just took a look at that, and
that's my next Drupal website, actually.
Is it really?
I'm going to build them a new website, yeah.
I just clicked on the link for the Facebook page, and it's showing 3 admins, all of whom I know. Chris Dart works for TEN7. He's one of our developers. So you know Chris very well, I would imagine.
I don't know Chris very well. Okay.
You should talk to him at the next Amnesty International meeting.
I will.
Third Sunday of every month from 2 to 4 at the First Congregational Church of Minnesota.
Yeah. It's a humbling experience to be, and it's empowering to be able to just do a little bit of work and help other people, you know. When we think about our problems here and we look at some of these cases that we help, people that get thrown in prison, one of the things we do, our local chapter does, is we adopt a prisoner of conscience. somebody who is in another country and maybe it's a case that's fallen to the wayside, and we'll say, let's do this and let's actually let's try and call the prime minister. So we're working with, our last case was with an Ethiopian journalist. His name was Iskender Nega. And this guy, I mean, if you think we have courage, this guy was a journalist in Ethiopia, which has a pretty horrible human rights record. And he would write about how he disagrees with the government. And he gets thrown in jail in 2005. And he spends 7 years in prison, and there's an amnesty campaign, and he gets out.
He does.
And he comes back out, and he starts writing again about things in Ethiopia, and he gets thrown back in jail, and he spent 6 more years in jail. And so this was a case that had fallen by the wayside, and our local group picked it up, and we started making calls, and we actually had an Ethiopian refugee here that was still connected in Ethiopia, and he started making calls. Some things have happened in Ethiopia where they're releasing a lot of prisoners of conscience, and Iskender Nega got released again. And he was getting around with a bunch of things, and he got thrown in prison again, but now he's out again. When I think about my activism, right, I just am organizing volunteers to sign letters. I'm not getting thrown in jail.
No,
over and over again. So people like that, real freedom fighters, right? Really people that are trying to change the system. That's amazing.
That is amazing. And kudos to you for doing that. I admire that activity that you have and the amount of time that you spend and your principled just persistence with this. Do you ever get a chance to arrange a meeting or a meetup with any of the people that you've helped?
Through the miracles of Zoom meetings like this, and what's the other one?
Hangouts and Skype.
Hangouts and
FaceTime.
Stuff. We've had calls with people, and I was really trying to get us to have a call with Iskender Nega and really to complete that circle. And just, it almost makes me cry to think that we could get him on the phone and say, hey, it's great to meet you, and we want you to know that you were our prisoner of conscience, and we really pushed hard to get you out, and it's great that you're there. So, and that's maybe some of the miracle of our technology, right? Is that we could make that happen. We could have Iskender Nega at one of our meetings in Minneapolis.
It's just a wonderful part of what technology can do, and I hope that we continue to invest in the open web and in the principles that we believe in. The fact that the internet can help more than just bad actors, and that there are more good actors on the web and in the world, and that ultimately we're all just humans trying to make it to the next day. So if someone wants to get involved with Amnesty International, they can go to twincitiesamnesty.org or to just amnesty.org and either become a member or contribute a donation.
I think the best place to get information, if you're on Facebook, is to look up Amnesty Group 37.
So Amnesty International Group 37 in the Twin Cities. And the meeting is this Sunday, so see you there.
Sounds great.
Wylbur, thank you very much for spending this time with me. It's really been a pleasure to get to know you a little better and to speak with you.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're Wylbur, that's WYLBUR on Drupal.org and also on Twitter and wherever other social media is on the web. Wylbur.us. We'll see you online. Find us online at TEN7.com/podcast. And if you have a second, do send us a message. We love hearing from you. Our email address is podcast@ten7.com. Until next time, this is Ivan Stegic. Thank you for listening.